Where am I going to go? Like I just felt like an orphan at that point. Did you know that most of our first responders who leave the job too early or retire ultimately have an identity crisis and collapse in who they think they are as a result of really putting everything that they have into this job and leaving nothing for other avenues, other projects and things so that when they do leave, they can still feel a sense of purpose. This is a result of putting everything into this job. We have a sense of routine. We have this structure. We have this purpose already kind of pre-planned out. We've seen the benefits of our service and the people we've helped and all of that stuff. And then you feel like there's almost no comparison because you get out and you're like, well, what can I do that gives me the same satisfaction? And then it leads to mental health struggles. It leads to a lack of feeling of self-worth and depression. And then we go down a very dark spiral. 20 to 40% of our military personnel, roughly, also struggle with the same thing. When they retire or when they leave, they feel like their service, what they were fighting for, what they were sacrificing for, there is no equal. And so when they leave, they don't feel like they're ever going to have something that fills their cup in the same way. The brotherhood, the sacrifice to something bigger than yourself. It's a huge thing. And then you feel like you just fall off a cliff. Well, we're going to talk about this using my particular experience that I'm having to deal with in real time that led to an identity crisis for me because my whole life was centered around the first responder world. Thank you all for joining the Flight Medic Barry podcast. Have you all struggled with this, or am I just the only one? Have you ever left the profession or thinking about it and you're struggling because you don't know what to do, you don't have a plan, you're afraid and you get all this anxiety and stress? Well, you're not alone, and I can tell you that I've experienced the same thing, and actively I still go through it. It's a really tough roller coaster to be on because I lived and breathed the first responder world since I was young, in my early 20s. And I've been in some semblance of service, and that's all I've ever known. And so then I didn't invest in a lot of other opportunities and avenues and even hobbies until a little bit later. And so I set myself up perfectly for an identity crisis. I felt like there was nothing that was going to satisfy my cup that was going to make me feel like I was worth anything, like my worth was tied into this profession. And I know that there are so many of you out there. Comment down below, self-worth, if you feel the same way. Because I truly believe that we struggle with this as first responders and our military counterparts. That when we leave the profession, we're so used to the routine, the structure, the purpose that is so huge. I mean, it is really such an amazing calling to be in as a first responder, to know that, I wake up and immediately I'm rushing into the craziest scenarios at times, sometimes not so crazy, sometimes, just some homeless people stuff, right? But really, it's really amazing to know the responsibility that I'm given. Like, I'm the ability to just go in somebody's home. I'm invited into their home, into their personal space, into their place of like safety and privacy, to be able to help them in their arguably worst time of their life. And I can tell you that there's sometimes no greater feeling than that. At least you think so. And then when you leave, you have to abruptly step away. You're like, how do I even measure up? How do I find something that is comparable, that makes me feel like I have purpose, that makes me feel like I have some semblance of the same feeling? Or am I taken out the pasture and that's it, right? And so I really believe that this is a struggle we all really have to contend with if we're not careful, because first responders, we're just notorious, right? Type A personalities, just go, adrenaline rush, run into the next thing. And we don't take time to inventory. We sometimes don't take time to plan these things out because we don't expect, for my particular circumstance, you don't expect cancer. You don't expect to have something catastrophic happen to stop you along your travels. Like, you're on your way in the middle of your career, maybe in the height of your career as it's going up in a crescendo, and suddenly you have to step away, whether it's from burnout, mental health, whether it's for one reason or another. Mine ended up having to just be cancer. And I can tell you, I was crushed. I was devastated. And I felt like I had no worth. I felt like my worth was tied to the profession, that my role, my status was tied all into that. And when I didn't have that anymore, it felt like I had nothing. I was worth nothing. I was lesser. And I don't know if that's something you've had or you felt or experienced, but I can tell you it was really a hard gut punch, because am doing things on the side, like educating and doing these other projects, but it just felt like there was nothing that could compare, right? Nothing that could compare to flying in the helicopter, flying in the airplane, and taking care of the sickest of the sick, and being there for the most needed people at their most desperate hour. And so, how do you find something that gives you the same level of satisfaction? And maybe, you necessarily don't find something that is it's identical equal, but you find something that gives you that same feeling just in a different way, doing a different thing. And that may sound like a lot, but it's just like we didn't become and get engrossed into this profession overnight. This was training. This was so long, so much time invested before we got to that point. So it's going to require this whole start over process, which is scary for a lot of people because it's like, I felt like I was only good at this, or at least I could get by doing this. I was capable. I felt like I was knowledgeable, and I felt like I was only good at one thing. So when I lost the one thing that I thought I was good at, I was like, well, that's it. I'm done. I'm just a loser and you start just shaming yourself and blaming yourself and guilting yourself and all of these things that leads to this spiral. And then now you're just caught in the spiral and not even thinking about a way out, because now you're just in this perpetual cycle of just punishing yourself. Because that was at least me. And I may not be speaking true to everyone, but I can at least say that I know I've run across a lot of people who, when they step away, they struggle with all of these different things that I am explaining now. And, my solution for you is to be optimistic and realize that you have a purpose outside of this. Your purpose is maybe even greater because of whatever you're going through, whatever circumstances you're enduring. Maybe that is your new pathway. And it sounds like, but it's not as exciting. Who knows? You may be surprised at what is in store for you in the future. And that's a tough thing because we may not like unknowns. I think a lot of us don't like unknowns because unknowns are scary. It could either go good, it can either go bad, right? So now we're stuck with this like unknown, destination on this horizon that feels endless. And there's like this mirage in the distance and you're not sure what you're seeing. It could be bad, it could be good. And maybe that's part of the journey, right? This new excitement. I think it's a matter of perspective. That's it right there. That's the key word, perspective. We can look at it as doom, gloom, all this negativity. But if we can reframe into a different way of looking at it, we can maybe find some excitement rather than dreading it, or find some joy rather than despair. So my challenge to you all out there is to, if you're in this kind of predicament, and this could be applicable to many professions that you've dedicated so long to, and that's all you've ever known, and then you have to step away, and then now you're stuck with this, what do I do now? I would argue that sometimes in that challenging time, you're going to actually be molded into what's coming next. It's in that trial, in that fire, that something is going to be made to get you to that next purpose. And so sometimes it's not just leaving one purpose and then immediately transitioning into another. Maybe there's a growth period, growing pains, and forging yourself into that version of you. But you have to go through uncomfortability. You have to be willing to accept there's going to be uncomfortable feelings and go, all right, I don't like it. And some days they get the better of me than others, but I understand that this is part of the process. We didn't get to become where we did in the first responder world or whatever occupation because of just overnight success, overnight anything. It was a long time. And so it's going to be equally challenging and patience in yourself to know that this is just the beginning. When one season ends, another season begins. That's maybe a better way to frame it. You all out there who are struggling with it, because I know I'm not the only one, I want to encourage you that your purpose is far from over. Because I thought, man, surround yourself by people who are going to pour into you. That's the other thing. Find your tribe, because what makes this process worse is being alone. Because when you're alone, you have nobody to counter your thoughts. You have nobody to rebuttal against you and say, what are you talking about, man? Like, you're so smart in this, and this. And you don't have people pouring into you So I would challenge you to surround yourself, whether that's spiritual friends, whether that's a church, wherever that may be for you, to surround yourself by people, even other people who have left the profession and come together and brainstorm different ideas. Great businesses have been made out of these kinds of things. This is kind of my challenge to you all. Like, instead of we sitting in self-pity and sulking and just being, because it's grieving. We're grieving the loss of this whole life that we've had. And we're now having to come to terms with, I'm older, whatever is going on. I have this condition. I have these, mental health struggles now. That doesn't mean it's over. That just maybe mean you're now in a different season that's going to yield a totally different purpose that could even be exponentially bigger. Because I believe that my circumstance has created an opportunity to be exponentially more influential in people, first responders, and to give. I feel like I can change 2 times, 3 times the amount of lives this way, even if it has to be at the expense of cancer. If I could look, and I think a lot of us would know, got to the end of the life and look back and got to see, like, okay, if I had to get cancer in order to make this big of a big an impact and make a big change in the world and leave my everlasting legacy, would I take cancer as a result? You better believe it. If I'm going to be seen as somebody who made a difference and made a change, made an impact in people's lives, then so be it. Then I will take cancer. But if it's like, oh, but you're going to take cancer, but you're going to live a miserable existence, would anybody take that? No. So it's a matter of perspective. We can take great tragedy, great loss, great grief, and turn it into something beautiful. We have that power. We have that creative power in us. It's there, believe me. I have had to suffer many tragic losses. I had autoimmune disease that took me out of the profession for over a year and plus, and left me 100% disabled. I couldn't even drive a car. That really sucked. I climbed myself out of it and continued on with my career. And then I lost my closest friend, and he passed away. And then I struggled there. And then now I have cancer. So it's not even a comparison of look how bad my life is. It's to show you that out of all of those things came something new, something more purposeful, something more exciting, and something to be proud of. So that can tell you that even in the darkest of times, some of the greatest things, right? What do they say? What is that? The brightest stars shine in the darkest of nights, right? So just keep that in mind and understand that this is just a season. And while a painful one and one that's difficult to acclimate to, because a lot of us struggle with this kind of adjustment difficulty, it isn't the end. It's the beginning of something new. Remember that. Don't quit on yourself. And again, if y'all liked, subscribe, comment, dropping down in the bottom below what your thoughts are. Am I missing the mark, or am I hitting some home runs? I also want you to hit the notification bell so you can be up to date on all that we're doing, because I want y'all to know we don't shy away from the difficult conversations. We don't shy away from the uncomfortable talks, because we believe that in order to change, in order to be better versions of ourselves, in order to grow, in order to elevate to that next level, we must be willing to confront our skeletons in our closet. We must be willing to look at the things that make us not feel good, because if we do that, we can then finally be aware and then ultimately make a change. And then we can be better all the way around. See y'all.